For the purposes of this video, we're going to define a cornerstone asset as a 24-year-old player or younger. The main reason we're going to be looking at this rather than just overall dynasty rankings, which one are posted on the site and two I will eventually get to you on a video, is these are players that you can build around even if you are a rebuilding team. Obviously, if you're a rebuilder, probably doesn't make sense for you to go after AJ Brown. However, if you are actually going to be a rebuilding roster and right now you are sitting with a player like Drake London, you don't necessarily need to go out of your way and sell him right this second. So starting off tier 1, we are going to have Jaden Daniels. Now, I will say, of course, if we had more space on the screen, maybe we would throw Jaden Daniels in his own tier. We all understand that Daniels is at the very worst, the 3rd or 4th player off the board in dynasty startups at the moment. He was the quarterback 5 in his rookie season. He went out there and had 891 rushing yards, 11 carries inside the 5-yard line. So you may actually see the rushing touchdown number go up from only 6 rushing touchdowns this past year. Still on the rookie deal, so the Washington Commanders are going out of their way. They're trying to get him additional weapons in the form of guys like Deebo Samuel. So Jaden Daniels, even if he does regress slightly in year 2, similar to what CJ Stroud did from a passing standpoint, given what he can do as a rusher, you can pretty much pencil him in to be a quarterback 1 every single season that he is a full-time starter, and he will be unless he gets injured. Now, going over to our next player in this tier, we're going to have Malik Neighbors. I know the Giants don't get a great quarterback, right? But the Giants do the best they can this offseason. In comparison to what Malik Neighbors had to deal with as a rookie, he should have better quarterback play with some combination of Russell Wilson and Jackson Dart. Maybe somehow, some way you end up getting Jameis Winston. If that's the case, Malik Neighbors will be the wide receiver 1 overall in fantasy. The crazy thing, if you're looking at this screenshot from flockfantasy.com, is Malik Neighbors last year had 34.9% of the New York Giants targets when he played, a 35% team target share. His yards per route run only at 2.2, but he was in one of the worst offenses in the NFL. He did absolutely everything he could. If you have any improvement whatsoever at the quarterback position this year, which looks like it may be the case, Malik Neighbors could take that jump to actually be a top 3 wide receiver in fantasy. If we're looking at a 21-year-old wide receiver rookie seasons, Neighbors did have the best one ever. The next best was Jamar Chase, then Justin Jefferson, then Mike Evans, Juju, Keenan Allen, Brandon Cooks, Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, Jeremy Maclin. So only studs on the list. Now, Puka Ngata, insane what he did last year. I know some people have wanted to disrespect Puka for whatever reason as of late, but if you are looking at his yards per route run, he was at 4.07. He was at the very top of the NFL. Now, yes, he got injured. Now, yes, you have Devontae Adams coming over, so you do get additional target competition. But frankly, it's not going to matter for me whatsoever. If you look at the historical comps for players that had a similar age 23 season to Puka Ngata, you had Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Odell Beckham Jr., Brandon Marshall, Chris Godwin, Anquan Bolden, Keenan Allen, David Boston, and then Puka Ngata. The most likely outcome the following year at age 24 is a 20 to 23 point season from a points per game perspective. Maybe long term, you have questions about Stafford, but Stafford should be a good quarterback, obviously, in the short term. I know people are going to hate this, and I completely understand why. And I'm not going to fault you at all if you want to throw Jamir Gibbs, Bijan Robinson, or Brock Bowers over him. If you look at most of the creators over on flockfantasy.com, if you sort by the expert average, you will see Gibbs and Bijan ahead of Ashton Genty. I'm willing to go out on a limb. I'm willing to go out there and say, you know what? If you are looking at one, where Ashton Genty is getting drafted in redraft leagues at the moment, going in the mid-first, back-to-back with Bijan and Gibbs. 2, the fact that you are getting an additional 2 years on this rookie contract. And 3, where he stacks up with this historical prospect grade on flockfantasy.com, you will see the only players that were better prospects according to the FSC model: Saquon Barkley, Bijan Robinson. In my opinion, I think Genty was an even better prospect than Bijan. But nonetheless, we look at the other running backs next to him: Christian McCaffrey, Ezekiel Elliott, Leonard Fournette, Jonathan Taylor, Joe Mixon. Every single one of these guys has multiple running back 1 finishes. Every single one, maybe Jonathan Taylor. If you look at points per game, he does. But non-points per game, he gets hurt, regardless. I think we can safely pencil in Ashton Genty to be a running back 1 in fantasy right now, be right next to Gibbs and Bijan from a total points perspective this season. You're getting the 2 additional years. Running backs not like wide receivers. with the hit rates that you have here, he is a very safe option. So we're going to be sticking with Genty 1. If you wanted to go Gibbs at 1, I'm not going to fault you for it. Gibbs had over 350 fantasy points this past season. Jamir Gibbs was the running back 1 in total fantasy points. Obviously, Barkley was running back 1 in a points per game perspective. The man had over 500 receiving yards, 27% juke rate. If we look at his historical comps, based off his age 22 season, you have guys like CMC, LaShawn McCoy, Kareem Hunt, Ray Rice, Steve Slayton, Joe Mixon, James Robinson, Saquon Barkley. I would be very surprised if he turned out to be James Robinson given the NFL draft capital. He's a hell of a lot closer to McCaffrey than he is J-Rob. And going over and looking at Bijan, Bijan was the RB3 this past year. Back-to-back seasons of 17 games played, 22% juke rate. The man ran almost 300 routes. He had 72 targets, 61 receptions. Super safe option if you want to put him at running back 1 as well. Going through and looking at his historical comps, given his age last year, you are looking at Kareem Hunt, Ray Rice, Steve Slayton, Joe Mixon, James Robinson, Trenton Richardson, Saquon Barkley, Bijan Robinson, and then Jamir Gibbs. And I think Bijan's a hell of a lot closer to Saquon Barkley than you have, again, with these guys like Kareem Hunt, with these guys like James Robinson, based off Barkley also being the elite level prospect. Now, going over and looking at what we have with Brock Bowers, clearly the tight end 1 in Dynasty. I think you could throw him over the running backs. I think you could throw him over Puka Ngata if you're playing in a tight end premium format that places a large emphasis on building around the tight end position. If you are looking at what he managed to do in his rookie season, he puts up the best rookie tight end season of all time. The next best, Sam Laporta, then Jordan Reed. Jordan Matthews was a wide receiver, then converted to tight end. Ignore him. Jeremy Shockey, Evan Ingram, Kyle Pitts, Hunter Henry, Aaron Hernandez, John Carlson, and then Rob Gronkowski. Brock Bowers was significantly better than the majority of these players at 15.5 fantasy points per game, where Laporta's season was at 13.8. And if you look at Bowers, he did it with volume. It wasn't just him getting lucky with touchdowns like Laporta. The man had 153 targets and 112 receptions. So super safe play. Again, if you're playing in the tight end premium format, you can move them all the way up to number 3 on this list. Now let's go over and let's look at Caleb Williams. With Caleb, I understand that most people are going to have him behind Brian Thomas. Most people are going to have him behind Drake May. Completely get it. But for me, he did not have a horrendous rookie season. We'll look at some really bad rookie seasons later on when we talk about Bryce Young. He had a fine rookie year at 5.8 adjusted yards per pass attempt. He gave you rushing upside with 483 rushing yards. Now, he had no carries inside the 5-yard line. He had no rushing touchdowns. So they didn't really turn into many fantasy points, but you saw the rushing upside is there. You have the improvement with the coaching staff. You have his weapons this next year being a top 10 drafted tight end, DJ Moore, a top 10 drafted receiver in Rome Odunze, Luther Burden. With the new supporting cast, I think Caleb Williams, you can pencil in for quarterback 1 production this season. And then if he does go out there and he's the quarterback 6 in points per game, very easily, he's going to be a consensus round 1 starter pick next offseason, which is kind of where I have him already, to be honest. Now, going over to Brian Thomas, yes, I will admit, I did move him down a bit after the Jacksonville Jaguars traded up to take a wide receiver at pick 2 overall. And yes, you will see with these rankings, I have Brian Thomas ranked ahead of Travis Hunter. But if we are going to be honest with each other, the probability of Travis Hunter being the wide receiver 1 in Jacksonville, while it may not necessarily be super high, it is there. There is a chance. Brian Thomas had a phenomenal rookie season, 25% team target share, 2.55 yards per route run. He was the wide receiver 4 in total fantasy points. He did this with an injured Trevor Lawrence. He did this in a disgusting offense. He's a great player. He was a great prospect, great across the board. But I do think Travis Hunter coming in, if he's going to play wide receiver and he has that kind of a prospect profile, will eat into the target share that you are getting from Thomas. Now, going over and looking at Drake London, it's difficult to sit here and project out exactly what we should have in Atlanta. I think a lot of this hinges on what your current expectations are for Michael Penix. One thing I haven't heard many people talk about is obviously we go back to that Michael Penix offense, his final season. You had Rome Odunze get drafted inside the top 10. You had Jalen Polk going round 2. And you had Jalen McMillan going round 3, all from that offense. Penix was a surprise top 10 pick in the NFL draft. And as we look back with Jalen Polk turning out to be nothing, Rome Odunze, we'll talk about him in a second, having a horrendous rookie season, and McMillan, if you look at the efficiency from a yards per route run standpoint, pretty damn bad. He scored touchdowns, so he scored fantasy points. People thought he was great. I don't know if we can overlook the possibility that Michael Penix made these wide receivers look better than they were in college. And if that's going to be the case, I think you should be really excited about what you're going to get with London. I'm going over and looking at Ladd McConkey. Ladd, little bit of an older rookie, so obviously expectations were that he was going to come in and be maybe a little bit more pro ready, but he was great. 2.56 yards per route run. While they go out there and they take a wide receiver in the NFL draft similar to the Jacksonville Jaguars, the wide receiver they take was a round 2 pick and does not have anything close to the prospect profile that you're going to get with the Travis Hunter. If you look historically at wide receivers that have a similar age 23 season to Ladd McConkey, you're looking at Tyreek Hill, AJ Green, DJ Moore, Brandon Cooks, Jeremy Maclin, DJ Chark, T. Higgins, Sidney Rice, and Nate Burleson. So I think Ladd, great range of outcomes, great rookie season, and you can be excited. Going over and looking at Drake May, if you check out the rankings on flockfantasy.com, and of course, I will really stress, if you are either going to be in a rookie draft, if you are going to be in a startup draft, regardless of what you are going to be in, you need to make sure you are looking at the rankings on the site. And at the very least, even if you're not a paid member of the site, the expert rankings are free. And you will see in those expert rankings, Drake May well ahead of where he's ranked here. Now, of course, I think you can make an argument to have May ahead of any one of these players inside the same tier. That's why we're doing this as tiers. If you're listening to some of the guys on the site, they'll make the argument that, oh, when Drake May did play a bunch, he was great. You had some of these weeks where he drops 20 fantasy points. You have some of these other weeks where he's at 19.5. He has 1, 2, 3, 4 quarterback 1 finishes as a rookie. What I would sit here in comparison to a player like Caleb Williams is I would say Drake May's weapons coming into this next year, 32-year-old wide receiver coming off a torn ACL, an underwhelming wide receiver prospect they just took in round 3 of the draft. If we're comparing what you have in Chicago, you have DJ Moore. I'd rather have DJ Moore than Stephon Diggs at this point. Rome Odunze, Luther Burden, top 10 NFL draft pick when it comes to tight ends, both getting the improvements with the coaching staff. But I think, honestly, Ben Johnson's probably a little bit of a better offensive line than what you're going to have with Vrabel. If Vrabel may be a better coach, I don't know. So I'm going Caleb, especially given the fact that Caleb was the better prospect coming in, or at least that's what everybody who evaluates quarterbacks told us. Now, going down and looking at our next tier, Achan's turning into Alvin Kamara. Like, game is game. We got to respect it. We got to call it out. The dude ran over 300 routes this past year. He had 87 targets. Now, of course, the efficiency dropped off a map, as you should have expected it to. And he was really bad in those games without Tua. Those games without Tua, like right after the Buffalo performance, get 8 points, 5 points, 2 points, 10 points. Disgusting. But if you look at the splits with and without Tua for Achan, this past year, it was at 22 points per game with Tua and 8.5 points per game without Tua. This is a pretty thin Miami Dolphins depth chart now. Running back, we can reasonably expect that Achan continues to get a massive role when it comes to his receiving outlook. And I think it's very easy to say in a full PPR format, he is a mid running back 1 this year, and we've already seen it. Now, going over and looking at Hampton, Hampton you could easily rank over Achan right this second if you wanted to. Again, I think with these rookie running backs, my general take is with the big, what are we going to say? The big 5, the big 4? The big 4, right? You have Genty, you have Hampton, you have Henderson, you have Judkins. I would rather overrank these guys than underrank them. Hampton, if you look at his best comps in the prospect profile, Taylor, Mixon, Etienne, Javonte, Brees, Najee, Jamir Gibbs, and Alvin Kamara. He checks every single box you'd ever look for. He has the size to be a 3-down player. He carried that 3-down workload in college. He has the athleticism to be a star running back. He gets the round 1 NFL draft capital. He had the receiving upside, finds a good offensive line, finds a good coaching staff, finds a good quarterback. There's nothing not to be desired here with Hampton. You can go all in right this second. If you wanted to put him over Achan, you do you. You can go for it. I think Achan's going to help contending teams a little bit more. Hampton would help rebuilding teams a little bit more. The only concern is Najee will play all 17 games. The dude always does. And he'll probably have a little bit of a role at the beginning of the year, but obviously Dynasty long-term outlook, not a super big concern. Now, another thing that if you check out the flockfantasy.com expert rankings, you will see that I'm way off from everybody else on, is I'm putting CJ Stroud over Bo Nix. Now, this is something I could be dead wrong with, and I want to address the fact that Bo Nix has scored more fantasy points in his rookie season than CJ Stroud did in either year 1 or year 2. Bo Nix scored about 320 fantasy points with not really much to speak at with his weapons. Bo Nix was great. Now, Bo Nix and CJ Stroud are really funny if you were going to be looking at their age. CJ Stroud is a younger quarterback than Bo Nix. And if you look at the efficiency of CJ Stroud was at 8.1 adjusted yards per pass attempt as a rookie. Bo Nix at 6.5. Bo Nix had the 4 rushing touchdowns and he had the 430 rushing yards. So for me, I'm not ready to say that Bo Nix is a better real life NFL quarterback than CJ Stroud. Maybe I need to just go take the L, Mason. What are we talking about here? This is fantasy. Bo Nix has more rushing upside than Stroud does. Just take Nix, which is a completely fair argument to make. And honestly, why I think probably most people on the site are right to rank Bo Nix ahead of CJ. Now, sticking with the trend that I'm going to be higher on these rookies, especially for rebuilding teams than most people, I stand by Travis Hunter and not Tet McMillan, T-Mac, whatever you want to call him. They are elite wide receiver prospects. Now, this is an underwhelming wide receiver class on the whole. That's why you'll see we're very aggressive with Hunter. We're very aggressive with McMillan. You look later on with Golden, Egbuka, whatever it is, you can rank them as low as you want to. But specifically with Hunter, Heisman winner, all the efficiency you could ever want, while on top of this, playing defense full-time in college. If you believe the Jags coaching staff, where they are saying Hunter is a wide receiver first, and he is going to learn the defensive playbook as time goes on, I hear that as them saying, hey, we're going to throw the dude a bone, and yeah, he can play a little bit of defense if he wants, but we're going to put him at the more valuable position in the NFL. You know that's what NFL teams think when the top 10 players in combined wide receiver cornerback contracts, the first 9 are wide receivers until you get your highest paid corner. I think Travis Hunter mainly plays receiver. I think he's a generational level prospect. Tet McMillan, T-Mac, the same exact thing. You go over to the FSC prospect model. The only prospects that were better were Neighbors, Harrison, Chase, Lamb. Right after McMillan, you have London, Rome, Devonta Smith, A.J. Brown, and Justin Jefferson. Insane market share numbers, plus top 10 draft capital, finds a landing spot where he's the long-term alpha one there. Going over and looking at JSN. JSN, horrible rookie season, much better year 2. I maybe am going to be out on a limb. Maybe this is not what people want to hear. But JSN, great counting stats last season. 100 receptions. Looks amazing. Almost 1,200 receiving yards. Plays all 17 games, which obviously you're not going to count that against him. But if we look under the hood and we look at the efficiency of this year, 1.83 with his yards per route run. Definitely an improvement up from 1.33 as a rookie. And I'm not sitting here and telling you that Jackson Smith-Njigba is not good. I think that he is very, very good, and he is the clear alpha, and I think you should expect a 25+% team target share in Seattle. But if the overall offense regresses, we see fewer pass attempts in general, and Sam Darnold's not as efficient as what Geno Smith is. And I can't sit here and tell you if Darnold's better than Smith, but what I can say is Geno commanded a bigger contract than Sam Darnold did. I don't know if JSN has the same level upside as what we are seeing with the rookies. I think he definitely has a lot higher of a floor. Going over and looking at Marvin Harrison, again, I think Harrison is arguably a better prospect than Hunter, arguably a better prospect than McMillan. But I do need to address the fact that he didn't have a great rookie season. 1.68 yards per route run, much better of a rookie season than what you had with like Jackson Smith-Njigba. But if you do look at the historical hit rates, it is going to lower it quite dramatically. Now, I will say, he still comps to have some really strong seasons opposed to previous 22-year-old wide receivers like Calvin Johnson, Drake London, Deshaun Jackson, Stephon Diggs, Andre Johnson, Des Bryant, Dante Moncrief, Torrey Smith, Robert Woods, Marvin Harrison. So maybe it's too low to have Harrison here. I know 99% of people watching this are going to put him ahead of the rookies, and you are 100% in your right mind to do so. You could put Harrison all the way up. I would have Hampton ahead of him, but if you wanted to put him right before Stroud, you do you. I'm not going to argue with you for a second about it. The main thing I want to address with this tier is if you don't want to put Hunter, McMillan ahead of these guys like Jason and Harrison, fair point, and maybe you shouldn't, but I definitely think you should be viewing them as comparable options. Now let's drop down our next tier and let's look at Cam Ward. Now with Cam Ward, again, y'all know I say this all the time. I'm never going to sit here and tell you that I'm some expert quarterback scout. I'm not. The NFL isn't. It's extremely difficult to evaluate these guys. When I look at a situation they step into, I look at NFL draft capital indicating what NFL talent evaluators think, combined with job security at the next level, and rushing upside if it's going to impact their fantasy football floor ceiling combo. What I think is funny here with Cam Ward, situation I think's horrible, as opposed to what normal number one picks go to. And if you go back and you look at every rookie draft over the past 3-4 years, where do the guys that get selected at number one overall in the NFL draft typically get drafted in rookie drafts? Where did Caleb Williams go last year? Oh, Caleb Williams was pretty much the consensus 101, no? And now Cam Ward coming in maybe didn't have the name cachet that a Caleb Williams did 2 years out from the NFL draft. He does get the number one NFL draft capital, and a lot of people are viewing him as the sixth best rookie in this class. No longer ranking the first quarterback off the board as the 101, instead ranking him as the 106. Now you'll see with my rankings, I have him the 105. I'm not saying that he should be the 101 by any stretch of the imagination, but I think Ward is still a very nice asset to buy into. Bucky Irving, phenomenal rookie season, right? 30% juke rate, insane. The reason I'm going to have Bucky below the tier of like Achane, Hampton, one, maybe I'm wrong in saying this. I think Hampton's a much better running back. I think Hampton's in a rush first offense. I think Achane's shown us an elite ceiling that Bucky maybe hasn't gotten to just yet, where Bucky this past year had 0 games with more than 30 fantasy points. Bucky is still great in his own right, but what I'm going to need to see from him that Achane did in year 2, and if he does it, cool, we'll move him right up, is I need to see the receiving skill set continue to expand. If we can get Bucky Irving up to a similar target share as what Achane had, where Bucky Irving this past year was sitting at about an 8% team target share, where Achane was sitting at about a 15%, I think you could very easily make the argument to move Bucky ahead in the tiers up next to Harrison. Now, Trevion Henderson will be our next guy. Given Henderson's receiving skill set, the fact that he's going to an offense that we expect to be much, much better this next year with Drake May, again, I'm fine ranking him ahead of Breece Hall right away. I'm going all in on these rookies. You have the receiving skill set. You have an offense that should be better. Not many weapons in it. So I think Trevion Henderson, from a target share perspective, could look similar to Alvin Kamara's rookie season. Now, the efficiency is probably not going to be there because Alvin Kamara is a super special running back, of course, but he checks pretty much every single box that we are looking at, such as Quinshon Judkins does. We'll talk about in a bit. I'm going to prefer Breece over Judkins, though. Difference being, I think Judkins, you're in a really bad offense and you're going to have to deal with the committee. And I don't know if Judkins has the same level receiving role that Breece Hall does for these full PPR formats. Now, going over and looking at our next guy, realistically, Garrett Wilson needs to be in the same exact tier with Breece Hall, Quinshon Judkins. I will get that updated on the site. Garrett Wilson belongs in the tier above. He is in the C tier. I am obviously very concerned in the short term with Justin Fields coming in. With Fields, he's been able to establish one wide receiver one in fantasy before, and that was DJ Moore. I do not want to discount what DJ Moore was able to do with Justin Fields in his final year in Chicago. Garrett Wilson has seen the efficiency look very bad over the past 2 years, however, where he has been sitting at 1.56 and 1.71 yards per route run. And if you wanted to sit here and make an argument, well, Mason, you just have to contextualize this. Garrett Wilson had horrible quarterback play with Rodgers. He had horrible quarterback play with Zach Wilson. Well, I agree with you. I think that Zach Wilson's a much worse quarterback than Justin Fields is. From a passing perspective, especially providing volume, I don't necessarily know if we can say the same thing from Aaron Rodgers to Justin Fields. So the main thing is I just think that the Jets are horrible. I don't like wide receivers and horrible offenses. Malik Neighbors has shown us the elite ceiling in a horrible offense where Garrett Wilson just simply never has. So I'm maybe going to be a little bit hesitant with Wilson, but I do think he needs to be up in the same tier as these guys like Breece, Henderson, Judkins. I'm going over to McCarthy. Again, stating what we always do when it comes to these quarterbacks we haven't seen in the NFL. It is extremely difficult to evaluate these guys. I'm not going to be able to sit here and tell you, oh, JJ McCarthy looked good in the preseason. That means he's going to be a good real-life quarterback. I have no idea. But going back to what we always do, when we're looking at the quarterbacks coming into the league, you need to evaluate the situations they're stepping into. Like, let's just all be in agreement here. Would Brock Purdy be as good of an NFL quarterback if instead of going to the Niners franchise, he went to the Cleveland Browns? He went to the New York Jets? No, we probably wouldn't even know his name. For looking at McCarthy, he is going over and stepping into a situation with the best weapons in the NFL. Not only the best weapons in the NFL, but on top of this, a great coaching staff that just elevated Sam Darnold. So I'm fine betting on McCarthy early, because if a quarterback's ever going to succeed, it is in this situation. Michael Penix has a fine little situation himself. 6.4 adjusted yards per pass attempt in a very limited role that we saw last year. When he did start, we did get the 312 passing yards, which obviously was really nice to see. But it's just extremely difficult to look at his last game against Carolina Panthers and say, oh, we know what's going to happen this next year. Going over looking at Xavier Worthy. If it wasn't for the second half of the Super Bowl, I wonder where he would be priced at the moment. I really want to be in on Worthy, because if you remember, this is a 21-year-old wide receiver coming into the NFL, gets the round 1 draft capital attached to Mahomes, immediately starts producing and is decently efficient in a low volume passing attack. And now you're going to year 2, where we typically expect that those efficient rookies command a larger role. And if Worthy gets more volume, you could see that year 2 explosion that we're used to for these options. The concern is, one, does Rice dominate the targets? And I know you're not going to see Rice on this list. Rashee Rice is a lot older than some of y'all think. But besides that, if Rice dominates the targets, if Rice is healthy and not suspended, it may cap the overall ceiling of Worthy, especially knowing that with Worthy's frame, he probably never profiles to be a wide receiver earning 180 targets in a season anyway. Now, let's talk about Bryce Young. And with Bryce Young, let me give the positives first, because people are about to get really upset with what I say. The positives are, he is going to be with a dramatically improved situation in 2025 as opposed to what he had in 2023 and 2024. With Bryce Young as well, he's extremely young. He is younger than Michael Penix. He is younger than Bo Nix by quite a bit. So those are going to be the positives. Much, much better situation, young, and he definitely showed improvement in the second half of the year. You go in the second half of the season, starting against, say, the Kansas City Chiefs, 8.1, 6.9, 4.9, 5.3, 7.6, 8.7, 9.2 adjusted yards per pass attempt. You add in a wide receiver that I believe to be an elite prospect with T-Mac. All looks bullish for Young. But we need to call a spade, and we need to objectively look at his first 2 NFL seasons. And again, I just gave all the excuses. I already know what you're going to say in the comment section, and I agree with you. I know he had a bad situation. I know he was set up to fail. I know it's a better situation this next year, and I know he improved in year 2, specifically in the second half. His first 2 seasons have been horrific. A spade is a spade. 4.5 adjusted yards per pass attempt in his rookie season. 5.6 adjusted yards per pass attempt in year 2. The man was sitting here with 16 games started in his rookie season and 11 passing touchdowns. 14 games in his second year and 15 passing touchdowns. Was horrendous. Now, reasons to believe he's going to get a lot better, so please don't get triggered. If we go ahead and we look at quarterbacks to have this poor of a start of their NFL career, to have less than 5 adjusted yards per pass attempt as a rookie, and less than 6 adjusted yards per pass attempt in year 2. Here's the list. Bryce Young, Kenny Pickett, Zach Wilson, Justin Fields, Blaine Gabbert, Mark Sanchez, Kyle Bowler, Joey Harrington, David Carr, and for whatever reason, Joey Harrington shows up twice. This is not a list of future star NFL quarterbacks. It's not. It's a list of NFL bust. I'm not saying Bryce Young's guaranteed to be that. There are reasons to believe that he can improve this next season. But I would much prefer the guys like Penix and McCarthy where we haven't seen the failure at the NFL level yet. Now going over to our next tier, Jordan Addison, I think from a talent perspective, similar to Garrett Wilson, from a talent perspective, belongs much higher on this list. Biletnikoff winner, good rookie season, good year 2, but going into this next year, he's probably going to get suspended, which isn't a super big deal from a dynasty perspective. But McCarthy's still a wild card, and while I think McCarthy is set up to succeed, we frankly don't know. And you are always going to be a second fiddle to Justin Jefferson, and now you have TJ Hawkinson healthy for a full season. So for Addison to really be a fantasy monster, you are going to need McCarthy to like turn into Baker Mayfield from last year with his passing volume. Going over and looking at Rome Odunze, Rome was horrible. Okay. Again, reasons to believe that he can get a lot better this next year. Ben Johnson, improved coaching staff, Caleb Williams going into year 2, and Rome Odunze going into year 2. And he was a really good prospect coming out. He's a top 10 NFL draft pick. But calling a spade here, very similar to what we are doing with Bryce Young, we have to address how bad he was. 1.32 yards per route run. The man ran 552 routes. He played 85% of the snaps for the Chicago Bears. He did not fail because he didn't get on the field. He failed because he couldn't get open. He failed because Caleb Williams wouldn't throw him the ball. And now a coaching staff that didn't draft him decides to immediately take a tight end with their first pick at 10 and turn around and decide to, I don't know, take a good wide receiver prospect in the second round. That is concerning for Rome Odunze. I know people are going to say, well, Jackson Smith-Njigba had a bad rookie season. But you can't look at the most recent example of a player having a poor rookie season, then breaking out in year 2 and justifying that for all these guys that have poor rookie seasons. A lot of times when they have bad rookie seasons, they're bad. We go ahead and we look at wide receivers that had similar age 22 year to Rome Odunze. You have Travis Taylor, Hollywood Brown, Corey Davis, Romeo Doubs, Titus Young, Tavon Austin, Tyler Boyd, Marlon Brown, Ace Sanders. If Rome turns out to be any of these guys or the average of these players, it will be a very bad career for a player that was a top 10 pick. Going over and looking at Matthew Golden, I think is a very bad prospect, specifically for fantasy purposes. Given his athleticism, I think he can be great for the Packers. I think he can stretch NFL defenses, and I think that's exciting and exactly what the Packers need. But we didn't see him command targets at Houston. We didn't see him command targets at Texas. I know a lot of people watched the film and said, well, he was open, but I've heard that a ton. I heard that about Adonai Mitchell, same offense 2 years ago. Again, 9 times out of 10, when you're looking at these receivers that don't command targets at the collegiate level, they're not going to command targets at the NFL level. The only exceptions being those guys that had to go up against elite level wide receivers in college for their targets, such as, say, Brian Thomas last year having to go up against Malik Neighbors, which it's very easy to say when that's the case when we look at both of them going round 1 in the NFL draft, where Matthew Golden, his target competition was Isaiah Bond. Where did he go? So I think Golden, Egbuka, great prospect, lands as the wide receiver 3 in an offense. Golden, I don't like the prospect profile, but could reasonably be the wide receiver 1 for Jordan Love. Loveland wasn't super productive at Michigan, but you have to contextualize it, of course. 58 receiving yards per game, where the next best receiving option was at 22. Tyler Warren, I know most people viewed him as the tight end 1 coming in. Maybe a little bit of a concern that I have is just the situation with the passing volume that you may have in Indianapolis, but it's not like Loveland has a great situation either. And then looking at Jackson Dart, NFL Draft Capital indicates that if he gets in as a rookie and doesn't look great and the New York Giants have a top 3 pick in next year's draft, they'll be quick to move on from Jackson Dart, just take a new quarterback in round 1. Very similar to what we see with Will Levis, right? But also, given the fact that he is a round 1 pick, unless he's Paxton Lynch, most likely he is going to at least get a chance to start. I'm going down to our next tier. Don't love RJ Harvey, the prospects, but at the same time, you find pretty much the best landing spot you can possibly get going to the Denver Broncos. Looking at Caleb Johnson, great prospect, and I know a lot of people are super excited about the Pittsburgh landing spot. My hesitation is I just don't exactly know what to expect with the receiving involvement since Jaylen Warren is in the offense. And if Rodgers doesn't sign with Pittsburgh, it can be a horrendous offense. Going over with Jameson Williams, I know there was some smoke that the Lions don't like him. The Lions want to get out of him. I don't know. I mean, I didn't really like Jameson coming into the NFL for a multitude of reasons. Wasn't a high target earner in college, to be honest. Thought he was going to be a better NFL player than a fantasy option. I still stand by that sentiment, but I do have to be honest. He had a really good year 3, much better than the first 2 seasons. He was up at 2.17 yards per route run. Target share jumped up to 19%, played 80% of the snaps. So Jameson definitely trending in the right direction. Jaden Higgins could be the wide receiver 2 for CJ Stroud, which you can tell by these rankings. I think that Stroud could get that bounce back in year 3. Looking at George Pickens, I think we're too high on Pickens. Unless Pickens gets dealt or Rodgers goes over to Pittsburgh. George Pickens is in a situation where he's the wide receiver 2 in one of the worst passing offenses in the league. Luther Burden, good prospect, but he's possibly the 4th option in his offense. And I know everybody hates Ricky Pearsall, but what's hilarious is if you actually look at underdog drafts, which I think is being overdrafted there, don't get me wrong. Ricky Pearsall is going higher than like Brandon Ayuk. Like insane in my opinion. But expectations are that he is going to be much better this season. And I don't think you can look at what he was as a rookie and completely dismiss him. The dude got shot and he only played half the year. Y'all know I drafted a ridiculous amount of him last season in underdog drafts. So I want to root for the guy for sure. But I think that's all I got for y'all for this video. Again, you can go to the comment section. I know y'all are going to scream at me about the Travis Hunter and T-Mac rankings. Completely fine. Let me hear it. But really appreciate you. And again, if you think these rankings are clownish, go look at the rankings on the site, the expert average. They're going to give you a great sense, pretty much what everybody watch on YouTube thinks about these players. But I appreciate you and really hope we get to see you out with the next video or live stream.